let's talk about input and output. One of the first things usually you do with a programming language is you want to write text. You want to see something on the screen. And the easiest way is to print text to the screen. So to print something to the screen, we can use print function. And text and the symbols you can also send to, for example, to the web or to the file and so on. But the simplest way is to print something on the screen. We will cover later how to write to the web or how to write to the file. So the print is a function. We will have a separate video with what is a function. But currently we can just say that this is a function, and we can give some values to this function, so those values will be printed to the screen or output to the screen. Some examples. So we have a print. Print itself is a function. Then we have parentheses, and inside that we can put some values. And those values will be printed to the screen. So for example, print hello world prints out the hello world text without the quotes itself. So it's just hello world and exclamation mark. Every text in this example will be printed on a separate line. So hello world will be on the first line, then there will be welcome, and then there will be to school in a separate line. We can use triple quotes to have line breaks inside a text. As I pointed out, the print itself prints every text into a separate line. And basically, in the end of the text, there will be a new line or line break symbol. And triple quotes can be used to have a line break inside the string itself. So we call text a string. The data type to represent text is string in programming. And for example, if I print out, I just use shorthand P for printing. So if I print out hello, what happens is that to the screen, the text or the symbols from here, there is no space here, will be printed. And actually here will be put new line symbol. I just draw a new line break here. To be more precise, there is actually a special symbol for that. So the computer somehow has to know that there is a line break, and this is the \n is used for that. So in certain cases we will show also what or how to use this symbol. But basically what you have to know is that if I have print hello and I have print world, what happens is that the world will be on a separate line. If I don't want to add this new line in the end, I can do that also. And for that, I have to specify inside this print function what is the symbol in the end of the string. By default, it's this new line symbol, but I can specify that, for example, let's say hello, and let's say that the end is empty string. Now what happens is that hello is printed out, and if I print world here, it happens that it will be written here, world. So there is basically no space here. So with this end argument, I can say what symbol will be put after the string or the text. By default, if it's not written here, then the new line is meant. Usually you don't use this. This is rarely you want to use something else here. Usually you just print out the text and you want to get it from a new line. Here are other examples where I use, for example, space as the end symbol. If I would have add space here, I would have had space here also. So that's one way to do it. Or for example, I want to have some whatever symbol here, then it will be used here. But another way to print this would be just print hello world. So I have space here and I don't use this end argument at all. Yeah, and if this end argument is not pointed out or there is no value for that, then the default value is line break. Multiple values. You can print multiple values and you just separate them by comma. 1, 2, for example. Then what happens is that the result is printed out and space is put between those values. I can print also different types. Here hello 2, and then the output will be hello space and 2. You don't have to worry about that you have string here and integer here and so on. And in this example you can see the third line is printed out basically as this here, that I have hello, I have some string and then I have one integer value. But now what I have done here is I've added one line which does something like that, stir 2. So the difference between those two, okay, here is space also, the end result is same. I will get hello space and 2. But the difference here is that in this line I print out 2 values and those 2 values are separated by space. Here what I do is that I will get one string. Okay, the first step is that this one is changed into string because I cannot concatenate the string and integer value. So what happens is that this will be changed into string. Now I can concatenate or kind of glue them into one string. So I will get hello space and 2, and now this will be printed out. So the result is the same, but that's just a different way to do it. But just maybe to have an example how to write out numbers along with the text. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. If you print out and use different arguments, then you can mix strings, integers, booleans, whatever. So you can write whatever here. There is no problem that you have different data types. But if you want to concatenate them or add them together, then it is important what kind of data types you are adding together. Yeah, the point here is the same, that the last line converts the number into string, then those strings are put together, and then this end result is printed out. Let's talk about f-string. If we add f in front of a string, then we can use, for example, variables or Python expressions inside a string. And we call it f-string. So everything inside those symbols we can, in f-string, we can evaluate or will be evaluated by Python. Here are some examples. So what happens if we just have a string, let's say s, and the value is hello. This is regular string, nothing special about it. Now we can have another string, but we add f symbol or f character before it and write hello here. So basically now this becomes f-string. And in this example there is no difference basically because they have the same value, or the value itself is the same. But what we can do with f-string is that we can evaluate different Python expressions inside the string. So let's say we have a variable name, which is Aro. Regular string, no f in front of it. And now we want to have a greeting. So let's say it's hi, and we want to say hi Ago. So before we do this f string, we can use regular strings. We can say that it's hi plus name. Yeah, there's nothing to be added here. Oh, of course, space would be nice, or comma or whatever, it would be nice here. Let's say we also want to add exclamation mark, so we will get something like hi Ago. Nothing too fancy about it, but still, you can see to have this name inside this result, I have to write a lot of code. So instead, we can use f string. With f string, we can use variables inside the string. Let's have name here and exclamation mark here. So everything between those parentheses or logical parentheses are evaluated by Python. So because it's a variable, it's just treated as the value of it, Ago. Very hard. So the result is the same, hi Ago, exclamation mark. But it's a bit easier to write. It probably should be less symbols than in this line, but in addition, it's easier to read. Here I have to check whether what is added here, whether this space is here, whether space is here. But here I basically see it as I see the result, just one part of this is replaced. In addition to using variables, I can also just calculate something here. For example, let's say sum is, and now I can add 1 plus 2 plus 3 x. Now what happens is that it basically is the same as sum is 6. It's a nice way to calculate something or call out functions. For example, here we have example where there is a function call, for example, whatever function, whatever value. The 7 here could also be some variable and so on. But it's more convenient to read and more convenient to write this kind of strings or this kind of expressions inside the string. Because as we saw here, we have to put the string together, and especially the name part is actually quite easy compared to, for example, we have a variable total, which is, let's say, 7. Now if I want to write that the total is 7, I have to write something like that. Total is. Now I cannot add the integer value directly to the string. So now I have to convert it to string total. And now let's add also that it's euros, for example. So total is 7 euros. But if I would write it as a f string, I would write, let's say, quotes here, total is. Now I have added here. Inside f string, I don't have to convert it to string. It's done automatically. Total euros. So as you can see, it's shorter, it's more convenient, and it's easier to read. Because here I have to especially see that the string ends here. Now there is a value or expression, then there is also string, and it can have more expressions after that, and it's very, it becomes hard to read. So in most cases, f string is way to go. Sometimes we would like to get some feedback or some input from the user. And to do that, we can use input function. So the input function basically reads something from the keyboard, and if the user press presses enter, then the text is stored into a variable. In this example, everything the user writes is put into the name variable, and then we print out what was the name. And everything is read until the enter is pressed. In this example, we get the feedback or the name from the user and we print it out. The problem is that there's nothing on the screen, so the user doesn't know what she or he has to write. To fix that, we can also print something to the screen. So the function input takes an optional argument, text, and this text is printed to the screen. In this example, the idea is the same. We ask the name of the user and then we print it out. But now, instead of just having a blank screen, the user sees that, yeah, you have to enter your name, and he or she knows what to do. And also, instead of printing just a name, we print it as a greeting. So, hi, Ago, for example. So the text which is passed to this input function is printed to the screen, and the input is read after this text. So basically, everything you write is also visible on the screen after this text. And now the user knows that he or she has to write his or her name, and now we can greet or print out the name. And you can see that we use f-string here to do the greeting. Also, the input function always gives us a string. So even if I write my name or my age as 10, for example, which is a number, it still is stored as a string. So it's nice to know that if I would like to, for example, calculate something from my age, for example, I have to convert it into number before doing any calculations, but because it's a string by default. Here is one example where I ask age from the user, and then I print out what is the age. So I just execute it, and you can see that there's the question age. I will write 12 here, and your age is 12. So this is pretty much the same as with the name, but the problem is if I want to say that next year you will be, and something which is, I don't know, +1, for example, then for example, if I would do it with f-string, then it's easier. I can just, still, I cannot use f-string because even if I try to calculate here age +1, the problem is that age itself is a string, and I cannot add string and a number. So I will get an error here. I will say 10, and I can see the error here because I cannot concatenate string and number. So you have to know that every time you ask a number, then you have to convert it to age number, or yeah, number is int age. Now I can print out age number. And now if I print out 10, it says that yeah, next year probably you will be 11. But the problem now is if I use it like that, and if I enter here Ago, then I get an error because I cannot convert it into integer. So there are those risks also. But the main idea is that always after the input you get a string. If you want to treat it as a number, you have to convert it into a number. Of course, you can always check whether it's a numeric or something like that. Then you can have if age is numeric, for example, then convert it to age or to number, and else print out that that's no number. So if I execute this code now, and if I write here Ago, then it says that that's no number, but okay, it also prints out that my age is Ago. But if I write it if I write 10 here, then it says your age is 10 and next year you will be 11. So with input you can ask something from the user. It is always string, the result or whatever the user inputs, it is always a string. If you store it in a variable, you have to treat it specially if you want to get a number out of it or something else. But yeah, you always get a string.